What if ancient India wasn't primitive, but different?
What if they built not machines, but minds?
What if they understood sound, energy, vibration?
Things science is only now rediscovering.
Maybe they weren't behind us in time. Maybe ahead of us in wisdom.
What if you're standing in a damp cave in the tribal region of Bastar, deep in Chhattisgarh? The flicker of your torch picks up strange figures painted on rock walls, humanoid shapes, no faces. Beside them, flying discs. Your heart skips. You ask, what in the world is this? Because here's the unsettling truth. This is real, and we don't know how it happened. When the unexplained starts to explain us. You know what's funny? The more you look at these mysteries, the less they seem like things, and the more they start feeling like mirrors. Yeah, think about it. When you stare at a mummy that's 500 years old and still smiling, when you stand under a rock that refuses to fall, when you read about a child remembering her past life in detail, you start to ask questions. Not about them, but about yourself. Why are we here? What happens when we die? What does it mean to be alive? Why do some things, no matter how smart we get, stay beyond reason? It's almost like the universe planted these mysteries not to confuse us, but to remind us. Remind us that we don't know everything. Remind us that curiosity is sacred. The world's not an exam you're supposed to finish. It's a story you're meant to explore. So yeah, these are mysteries of India, but they're also mysteries of humanity. What science says, and why it's still beautiful. Let's be fair, science has tried to explain a lot of these. Geologists say Krishna's butterball doesn't move because of friction and rock density. Atmospheric experts say the red rain was algae spores. Historians say the Indus Valley collapse was climate change. Psychologists say Shanti Devi's reincarnation was probably a mix of memory and suggestion. Okay, fine. But here's what science doesn't say. It doesn't say these things are boring. You see, science isn't the villain here, it's the flashlight. It doesn't take away the darkness. It shows us just enough to make us curious about what's beyond the light. So the next time someone says, oh, that's been explained, ask them, really? Fully explained? Or just explained enough to stop asking? Because the truth is, the moment we stop asking, the mystery starts dying. And when mystery dies, wonder dies with it. We need both. Science to measure the world, and mystery to feel it. The thread that connects them all. Let's play a little game. Pretend you're holding a string. Now tie it from the cave paintings of Charama, those strange, faceless beings and flying discs. Now stretch that same string across to the UFO base in the Himalayas, then loop it around the vanished Indus cities, wrap it around Nana Saheb's missing treasure, thread it through the mummy in Speedy, the floating pillar, the red rain, the ghost lights, the reincarnation girl, the birds falling from the sky. What do you see? A pattern, a story, a code? Maybe it's this. Every one of these mysteries involves something crossing a boundary between heaven and earth, between life and death, between logic and belief, between the known and the unknown. Charama, beings from the sky. Konkala, ships rising from the ground. Shanti Devi, crossing life and death. Jatinga, birds falling between sky and soil. Lapakshi, gravity breaking its own rules. Red rain, space meeting atmosphere. See it now? Every mystery is a bridge. Maybe that's what India has always been. Not just a country, but a bridge between worlds, between gods and men, spirit and science, myth and reality. And that's why these stories refuse to die. Because they're not really about events. They're about us standing in the middle of the bridge, looking both ways, saying, wow, what if the ancients knew something we forgot? Here's a question that keeps me up at night. What if ancient India wasn't primitive, but different? What if instead of building machines, they built minds? What if they knew how to use sound, energy, vibration, things science is only now rediscovering? Think about it. Ancient temples that hum at certain frequencies, stone carvings that align perfectly with the sun and stars, mathematical systems that predicted planetary motion thousands of years ago, and all this without electricity, without computers, without telescopes. We keep calling them mystics, but maybe they were scientists, of a kind we can't yet recognize. What if Shanti Devi's reincarnation story isn't supernatural? It's just natural, but we've lost the language to describe it. What if Krishna's butterball stands because its builders knew something about weight and resonance we no longer teach? What if the mummy in Spiti isn't magic, but a lost biological process of perfect preservation? See the pattern again? The word mystery might just mean knowledge we haven't rediscovered yet. So maybe, the next time we call something unexplained, we should whisper instead, not yet. When believers and skeptics both miss the point. Here's the thing, both sides can be wrong. The hardcore believer says, everything's divine, don't question it. The hardcore skeptic says, it's all coincidence, don't believe it. And in between them stands the truth, quietly waiting for someone who'll both believe and question. Because believing without thinking is superstition, and thinking without wonder is arrogance. The mystery doesn't care if you worship it or debunk it. It just is. Look at it this way. When you were a kid and saw your shadow moving, you didn't need a lecture on light diffraction to be amazed. You just said, wow. Maybe that's what the ancients did. Maybe that's what we've forgotten to do. To say wow before we say why. The power of the unknown in everyday life. Okay, let's step out of the temples and caves for a second. Let's talk about you. You face mysteries every day, even if you don't notice. Like, why do you dream of people you've never met? Why does a song you've never heard make you cry? Why do coincidences line up at the strangest moments, like thinking of someone just before they call? Science calls it probability, psychology, pattern recognition. But deep down, you know it feels like something more. These aren't big national mysteries, but personal ones. And maybe the reason we're drawn to stories like the red rain or the ghost lights is because they remind us of our own unsolved riddles. They whisper, you don't have to understand everything to feel alive. So next time something strange happens, don't rush to explain it. Maybe, just maybe, it's life giving you a wink. Let's play a little imagination game. If you were standing inside the Charama cave, staring at those faceless alien shapes, what would you feel? Would you be scared or fascinated? If you were at Conca La Pass at midnight and saw a light rise from the earth, would you record it or would you freeze, unable to breathe? If you were the archaeologist who first realized that the Lapakshi pillar doesn't touch the ground, would you think miracle or math? And if you were a villager in Kerala watching blood-red rain splash across your courtyard, would you look up in terror or drop to your knees and pray? These mysteries are fascinating not just because they're unsolved, but because they make us imagine, they make us feel. Fear, awe, curiosity, the full human package. That's the hidden magic. They don't just test our knowledge, they test our humanity. When mystery meets modern India. Here's the wild part. These aren't just dusty stories in history books. They're alive, in modern India. Scientists at ISRO really were consulted about the Karama paintings. Locals still see strange lights in Jatinga. People still bring paper to the Lapakshi pillar every day to see if it fits underneath. In 2025, you can stand in the same places that confused people centuries ago, and still feel confused yourself. That's kind of poetic, isn't it? We have smartphones with 200 megapixel cameras, but we still take blurry photos of UFOs. We've mapped the human genome, but we can't explain reincarnation. We've built robots, but can't figure out why a giant rock refuses to roll down a hill. Maybe the more advanced we get, the more we realize how little we actually know. And maybe, just maybe, that's progress. Because progress isn't always answers. Sometimes it's better questions. The missing chapters of Indian history. There's something haunting about lost civilizations, not just because they're gone, but because they remind us how fragile knowledge is. The Indus Valley people wrote, traded, built cities. They had art, order, and beauty. Then, gone. How many other civilizations disappeared like that? How many secrets about energy, medicine, or consciousness were buried with them? Maybe that's why India's ancient history feels so mysterious. It's not just old, it's interrupted, like a story torn in half mid-sentence. Every temple, every pillar, every symbol might be part of a larger book we've lost the rest of. And you know what's beautiful? We're still trying to read it. Every generation adds one more word, one more clue. That's the spirit of mystery. Not frustration, but curiosity stretched across time. Could the mysteries be protecting something? Now here's a crazy thought. What if some mysteries exist because they're meant to? Think about it. The Nizam's treasure has never been found. The UFO base lies between two countries that can't access it freely. The red rain appears, shocks everyone, then disappears again. What if these mysteries protect ancient knowledge or energy from misuse? What if they're gates, not puzzles to be solved, but boundaries to be respected? It's like the universe saying, sure, you can explore, but not everything's for you to own. Kind of humbling, right? Because sometimes curiosity without wisdom becomes danger. And maybe that's why mystery exists. To balance power with patience. To remind us that just because we can uncover something doesn't mean we should. The awe, fear, and faith. Let's be honest. Why do we love mysteries? Because they make us feel. The cave paintings make us wonder about life beyond Earth. The reincarnation story makes us question what happens after death. The mass bird suicides make us fear the fragility of nature. The floating pillar makes us admire human genius. Awe, fear, faith, all tangled together. That's what makes them timeless. They're not just puzzles, they're emotional experiences. When you stand under Krishna's butterball, your heart thumps a little faster. You know gravity should win, but it doesn't. And that small moment of disbelief, that's awe. That's faith without religion. That's emotion without explanation. That's what makes us human. What India teaches the world through its mysteries. Every culture has mysteries, but India's are special because they exist alongside logic. You'll find a scientist studying quantum physics and still bowing before a temple pillar that floats. You'll find a tech worker reading about the red rain on Reddit, then visiting a shrine to pray for answers. It's not contradiction, it's balance. India has mastered the art of believing and questioning at the same time. Maybe that's what the world needs now. Not blind faith or cold logic, but a heart that can hold both wonder and doubt together, because that's where truth usually hides. Not in extremes, but in balance. What if you were born in ancient India? Let's pretend for a moment that you time traveled to ancient India, 2,000 years ago. You walk into a temple still being built. You see sculptors carving stone so precisely it looks laser cut. You see astronomers mapping stars by hand. You hear monks chanting vibrations that make the air buzz. Would you call them primitive, or would you bow your head in respect? The truth is, they didn't separate science and spirituality. They saw both as tools to understand the same mystery, existence. That's what modern life misses. We divided what used to be whole. Maybe that's why so many of India's ancient mysteries still stand. They're like postcards from a time when humans understood unity better than we do now. The silent message of the mysteries. If these mysteries could talk, what would they say? Maybe the Karama paintings would whisper, "We weren't alone." Maybe the mummy and Spiti would murmur, "Discipline is the key to eternity." Maybe the butterball would chuckle, "Don't overthink, just balance." Maybe the red rain would sigh, "You're part of something cosmic." Maybe Shanti Devi would smile and say, "Death isn't the end." Every mystery has a message, if we're quiet enough to listen. And maybe that's what these stories want. Not explanation, but attention. To slow us down. To make us look. To make us feel wonder again. Mystery is not the opposite of truth. We often think mystery means ignorance, but it's not. Mystery is the beginning of knowledge. It's the spark that starts the fire. The question that births discovery. If you erase mystery, you erase the desire to learn. So when we say science can't explain it, that's not defeat. That's invitation. It means science hasn't explained it yet. Mystery and truth aren't enemies. They're partners. One asks, the other answers. And together, they dance through time. Sometimes holding hands, sometimes chasing each other. That's why India's mysteries feel so alive. Because they're not walls. They're doors. What's your mystery? You've heard all these stories, But here's a personal question. What's your unsolved mystery? Something about your life, your heart, your purpose that you can't quite explain. Maybe it's a dream that repeats, a gut feeling that always turns out right, a coincidence that changed everything. Whatever it is, don't ignore it. Mystery is how the universe taps your shoulder. It's saying, hey, there's more. So instead of brushing it off, follow it. Because sometimes your personal mystery leads to your biggest discovery. From local mysteries to universal ones. Now let's stretch our minds a little further. If India has red rain, ghost lights, levitating pillars, what about other countries? The US has Area 51. Egypt has the pyramids. Peru has the Nazca lines. Japan has glowing orbs like Alea. Maybe all these stories, from every continent, are threads in one vast global pattern. Maybe Earth itself is the mystery. We've been living here for thousands of years and we still don't fully understand it. Its energies, its consciousness, its hidden rhythms. So maybe unexplained mysteries of India are not isolated stories. They're chapters of a universal book still being written. And if that's true, how lucky are we to be alive at the same time, reading it together? What if the Earth remembers more than we do? Here's a thought that'll make you pause. What if the Earth remembers, even when we forget? Maybe those caves in Sharama aren't just art, maybe they're memory. Maybe the rock that refuses to move in Mahabalipuram remembers the moment it first landed there. Maybe the red rain remembers a time before we had names for the skies. We talk about ancient mysteries as if they're old, but they're not. They're alive. They're breathing reminders that the Earth itself is a storyteller. Every mountain, every temple, every drop of strange red rain is the planet whispering, I've seen more than you, and I'm not done surprising you yet. Science looks at evidence. Faith looks at meaning. But mystery listens. And maybe that's what we should start doing more often. Listening to the land beneath our feet. Because India isn't just a country. It's a memory. A living archive of everything humanity has ever wondered about. When we lose the ability to wonder. Let's be honest. We're living in a time when everything is explained, labeled, and wrapped in a 60-second video. You Google something, and boom, answer. No waiting, no curiosity, no space for wonder. We scroll so fast that nothing surprises us anymore. But here's the truth. When you stop wondering, you start shrinking. Your world becomes smaller, predictable, boring. That's why these mysteries are so important. They wake something up inside you. That spark that says, wait, how is that possible? That feeling, right there, is what separates being alive from just existing. It's the same wonder that made humans look at stars, build pyramids, write stories, and invent science itself. So if you ever feel like life's too routine, remember, you live on a planet where it once rained blood, where a pillar floats in the air, and where a child remembered her past life. If that doesn't make you curious again, what will? The connection between belief and reality. Here's something science quietly admits. Belief changes reality. Placebos heal. Fear raises heartbeats. Hope boosts survival rates. So what happens when millions of people believe something mysterious, like the Lapakshi pillar's blessing, or the mummy's spirit in Spiti? Maybe their belief actually creates an energy field. Maybe the world bends slightly to match collective faith. That's not superstition. That's human consciousness interacting with reality. So maybe the mysteries of India aren't outside us. Maybe they're mirrors of what we can do when we believe deeply enough. Because here's the paradox. The moment you open your heart to the unknown opens its door to you. How mystery shapes identity. India's identity isn't just built on empires or religions. It's built on questions. Who am I? What is truth? What lies beyond death? Every philosophy, every scripture, every myth circles back to curiosity. That's why these stories matter, not just because they're strange, but because they remind Indians and everyone else of who they are. A civilization built on exploration of both outer space and inner space. When you stand before the Lapakshi pillar, you're not just a tourist. You're continuing a 2,000-year-old tradition of asking why. That's the real legacy of India's mysteries. They don't divide people into believers and skeptics. They unite everyone under one question mark and say, Welcome to the conversation. The human side of the unexplained. Let's strip away all the grand theories for a moment. Let's look at the human side. Imagine being Shanti Devi's parents. Your little girl wakes up one morning and tells you you're not her parents. How do you react? Do you hug her tighter or start questioning your sanity? Imagine being the first scientist to test red rain under a microscope and finding something that looks alive, but has no DNA. Do you tell the world, or do you quietly panic? Imagine standing at Jatinga, hearing wings crash around you, and realizing you can't stop it. How helpless would you feel? Every mystery has people behind it, real people. Their awe, fear, curiosity, that's what gives these stories life. It's easy to look at them as legends, but behind every legend is someone who saw something and couldn't unsee it. That's what makes them timeless. Because mystery isn't about what happens, it's about what it does to us. The comedy of confusion. You know what's hilarious? Even the smartest people can't agree on anything mysterious. Ask 10 scientists about Krishna's butterball. You'll get 10 explanations. Ask 10 locals. You'll get 20 legends. And both sides think the other's crazy. That's human nature, we hate not knowing. We'd rather make up a bad explanation than admit, I have no idea. But maybe we should be okay with, I don't know. Because I don't know is honest, and honesty is the foundation of real discovery. Besides, who doesn't love a good mystery? Life without mystery would be like a movie where you already know the ending. Boring. So yeah, laugh about it. Maybe the aliens in Karama were just bad artists. Maybe the butterball's just lazy. Maybe the ghosts in Bengal got tired of being scary and turned into lights. Who knows? That's the fun part. We get to keep guessing. Mystery is a teacher. Every mystery, if you look closely, teaches a lesson. The Karama paintings teach us that imagination existed before technology. The Konka La UFOs remind us that borders mean nothing to the unknown. The Indus Valley disappearance warns us that even great civilizations can vanish overnight. Nana Sahib's treasure whispers that some victories happen in silence. The Nizam's vaults show how wealth fades faster than legacy. The monk's mummy proves that discipline outlives time. The Lapakshi pillar honors human craftsmanship. Shanti Devi's rebirth celebrates memory and mystery. Krishna's butterball laughs at arrogance. The red rain says, look up, not everything falling from the sky is normal. The Alaya lights teach caution. Not everything bright is safe. The birds of Jatinga mourn the fragility of life. The Arushi mystery warns that not all puzzles are ancient. Some live in our headlines. Each story is a classroom. Each unanswered question is a teacher. And maybe that's how the world educates us. Not through answers, but through awe. Why mystery makes us better humans. It sounds strange, but mystery makes us kinder. Because the moment you realize there are things you can't explain, you stop judging so fast. You become more patient, more open. You stop mocking people for what they believe in. You start listening. When science humbles us, humanity grows. That's why India's mysteries aren't just about ghosts or UFOs. They're about empathy. They remind us we're all in this weird, beautiful experiment called life, and none of us fully understand it. We're explorers together. And that's kind of beautiful, isn't it? The universal pattern. What if all mysteries speak the same language? What if the aliens, the monks, the lights, the rain, are all speaking the same language? A language we used to know, but forgot. Maybe it's vibration. Maybe it's frequency. Maybe it's emotion. Maybe Krishna's butterball doesn't move because it's in perfect harmony with the Earth's vibration. Maybe the red rain carries microbial messages from space, spreading seeds of life. Maybe the Alaya lights are trapped souls vibrating at a frequency just beyond human sight. Maybe reincarnation is consciousness transferring energy across timelines. Sound crazy? Sure. But you have to admit, it feels connected, doesn't it? Because deep down, every mystery hints at one truth, that everything is connected. Life, death, energy, space, time, all part of one vast design. And maybe the universe drops clues like breadcrumbs just to see who's paying attention. India's secret role in the global mystery map. Here's something most people don't realize. Many of the world's modern mystery hunters, from physicists to spiritual researchers, quietly study Indian texts. Because India is not just a land of myths, it's a map, a coded record of energy, cosmos, and consciousness hidden in stories and symbols. For example, ancient Sanskrit texts describe flying vehicles called vimanas, long before airplanes existed. The Rig Veda speaks of light beings traveling between worlds. The Mahabharata describes celestial weapons that sound eerily like nuclear explosions. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe India has been holding the puzzle pieces all along. Maybe the Karama rock paintings weren't the first UFO sighting. They were just one page in a much older story. And that story might be humanity's, not just India's. Why the unexplained shouldn't scare you. Most people hear mystery and feel fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of being wrong. Fear of losing control. But mystery isn't the enemy. It's the invitation. It says, come closer, look again. Fear shrinks us. Curiosity expands us. That's why children aren't scared of the dark. They're curious about it. They stare into shadows hoping something moves. Adults, meanwhile, switch on the light and call it a day. But curiosity is light too. It just burns slower. So don't be afraid of what you don't understand. Whether it's red rain, ghosts, or fate, lean in. You might not get the answer, but you'll get the story. And sometimes, that's even better. Mystery, memory, and meaning. The Holy Trinity. At the heart of every mystery lies three things. Memory, of something that once happened. Meaning, the attempt to explain it. Mystery, the space between the two. Ancient India understood this perfectly. That's why so many of its monuments mix logic and legend. A temple might align perfectly with the sun, science, but also tell a story of gods descending from the sky, myth. They never felt the need to separate the two, because to them the truth wasn't divided, it was layered. And maybe that's what we've lost today. The ability to hold multiple truths without tearing them apart. The ancients didn't say either science or spirit. They said both. And maybe that's the greatest mystery of all. Balance. The return of wonder. Close your eyes for a second. Picture the first time you saw something that made your jaw drop. Maybe it was lightning, or the ocean, or your first airplane flight, or a shooting star. That's wonder. The raw feeling of wow. Now imagine living a life where that feeling never fades. That's what mystery gives you. Eternal wonder. You don't need to solve everything to be amazed by it. You just need to stay open. Because every time you feel wonder, something inside you comes alive again. That child who used to look at clouds and see dragons. That's who you really are. Not a machine built to process answers, but a soul built to feel magic. What India's mysteries are really saying. After all these stories, all these clues, what are India's mysteries trying to tell us? Maybe this. That life is not a straight line. It's a spiral. We keep circling the same questions, getting closer each time, but we never reach the center. Because the journey is the answer. The ancient Indians knew that. That's why they built temples with labyrinths. That's why they carved gods with many faces, to remind us that truth has many sides. The mysteries we've explored today aren't just unexplained, they're invitations. To slow down, to listen, to be amazed again. Because in the end, the world doesn't want to be understood. It wants to be felt. So here's my challenge for you. Don't let this video be just another story you scroll past. Let it be a spark. The next time you hear thunder, think of red rain. The next time you see a shooting star, think of Conca La Paz. The next time you visit a temple, look closely. Maybe there's a pillar whispering secrets of balance. And the next time life confuses you, don't panic. Smile. Because confusion is just curiosity wearing a disguise. Remember, science explains how the world works. Mystery reminds us why it's worth living in. That's the bridge. That's where India stands. Between fact and faith, question and answer, earth and sky. So keep asking, keep wondering, keep that fire alive. And if you ever forget, go back to Karama. Stand before those faceless figures and flying discs, stare at them in the torchlight, and whisper to yourself, somewhere, thousands of years ago, someone looked at the sky and felt the same wonder I feel now. That's connection. That's legacy. That's life. If this story made you feel something, curiosity, chills, or even a smile, then don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who still believes in wonder. Comment your favorite mystery, or one from your own country that science can't explain. Like this, if you believe mystery makes life magical, subscribe, because next time we're going global. From the haunted islands of Japan to the whispering stones of Africa, we'll explore the world's strangest truths together. And as always, stay curious, stay humble, stay human. Because in a world that tries to explain everything, being curious is the last real adventure left.